So in my last video, I quickly went over some information on LEDs and resistors, kind of talking about what they are, how to calculate what you need. So in this one, I'm just going to show you how to actually connect them together. I'm going to be using a soldering pen. There's really not much other way I'd suggest connecting LEDs together. Like you can just take the wires, twist them together, and tape them, but that might not hold. So what I'll be going over is a simple circuit. This is going to be in series, like I talked about in the last video. This isn't how I would normally set up my circuit because it's a lot of wasted power. I'd probably have this series set in parallel with a couple other ones. But for simplicity, and because I'm cheap and I don't want to go through a lot of resources, I'll just do a quick circuit with this. So my circuit's going to have 4 LEDs. Each of them take up 2 volts. I have a 9-volt battery source. It's just this little cheapo 9-volt. It says 9-volt right there on top. I got a quick battery connect. Red's positive, black's negative. So in this one we have the red wire coming out the top here. We got the black wire coming out the bottom here. I used the well, I didn't, but you can use the website link that I sent you to figure out what kind of resistor you'll need. For this case, whenever you have a 9-volt battery source and all of these LEDs take 2 volts each and they run at 20 milliamps. Can't really see that, sorry. So each of these LEDs take 2 volts and have 20 milliamps. So the resistor that you'll need for this setup will be, oh geez, I think it's, I want to say 58 ohms. When you're using a resistor, and let's say that the website tells you, okay, you need like 50, let's say the website tells you need 58.6 ohm resistor. It's always good to go just below what they tell you, because if you go over the resistance, nothing's going to light up. So if you want to play it safe, and let's say the website tells you you need I don't know, something weird, like let's say you need like a 59 ohm resistor, and you have, let's say you have a 60 ohm and a 58. You're going to want to go with the 58, because if you go with the 60 ohm resistor, and then your LEDs are going to light up. If you go with the 58, it's okay to go just like a little below what they tell you. If you want something like really low, like let's say you use like a 20 ohm resistor, your LEDs are going to light up, but they'll be really bright, and then they'll go really dim, and they'll just kind of like wink out. So what you did is, at that point, you've burnt out your LEDs, and they're toast. So that's why you don't want to put too much current through your LEDs, because they'll burn out. And if you put a lot of current in really quickly, they'll heat up a lot, and then they'll explode. I mean, it's not super violent. It's not like a big explosion. It's just going to go pop, and little crystal LED is going to be shooting everywhere. But anyway, back to what we're doing. So we have our quick little LED circuits. I'll go over quickly. I'll show you. And then I'll show you what happens if you put an LED in the wrong position. So let's say you have your battery, you got your positive lead, your red wire coming out, you have your resistor, which is 58 ohms. You have your LED coming in, so you got your positive side, your negative side, positive, negative, positive, negative. Let's say you put your last one in backwards and you went negative, positive. So I'll show you what happens when you do that, and kind of some troubleshooting around that. So I'll just pause. I can hit my pause. Okay, so to make a circuit, you're going to need a few things. You're going to need your LEDs that you want. I just got a yellow one here. Like we said in the other video, there's multiple kinds of LEDs. There's these guys here, which I call like lamps or bulbs or bells or whatever you want to call them. They're kind of shaped like a little bell almost. They got a large flat plate on the one side, which is your negative side, and they got a small flat plate. Can't really see it. Sorry about that. You got a small flat plate on the other side, which is your positive side. So you're gonna need your LEDs. There's also like these kind too, which I'm not sure what they're called again, but I call them nipples. These guys are a lot brighter. which you'll be seeing later on, than these dudes. These guys, they eat up 1 watt, which is like, I don't really want to explain it. It's like a ratio between volts and amps, so current, voltage and current. So we'll go over that quickly later on. So you need your LEDs. You're going to need wire. It's handy to have 2 different colors. Red and black are usually the best ones to go with. So you have like your positive side and your negative side. You'll see later on why that's such a good thing to have. You're going to need you're going to need your resistors. So these little guys, I'm not sure which one this is. I'm not going to read it right now. But there's these little lines on here. They're different colors, and they'll tell you what resistance they are. You can look that up online. It's not too difficult to read it, but it's a lot easier if you just look at the packaging, and it'll tell you like 20 ohm resistor. You're going to need your solder, of course. So there's a bunch of different types of solder. What you want to go for is light duty, and you want it to be, that's French, my bad. You want it to have a lead silver solder, because it's really easy to melt. It's just a lot easier to work with. It's really small, if I can find a strand here. So it's really small, light, flexible, bends super easy. It's easy to work with. It's the best one you want to work with. You do want to be careful. Because it does have lead, you want to work in a really well ventilated area. You don't want to inhale the smoke, and you'll see later on that there is quite a bit of smoke that comes off this stuff. You just don't want to breathe that in, get heavy metal poisoning and stuff. And you're going to want a soldering pen. So I got this little guy here, which is a variable wattage soldering iron, 60 watts. It's a lot of technical mumbo jumbo, but basically it just means that you can change the current up 15, 30, 45, 60, all the way up. You will hear, I'm not sure if you can hear it, but there's like a humming. So you can use that to tell that it's on. Also, there's an LED indicator that'll tell you when it's on and off. You can get a nice little package. I'm not sure if you can really see it here. It comes in this package. It has, with the soldering pen, comes with a nice little stand so you don't burn whatever you're putting your soldering pen on, so you don't have to turn it off. And it comes with a couple replacement tips. As you can see with usage, they get kind of gross and dirty after a while, as opposed to a nice clean brand new tip I just have in there. You're also going to want a cloth or something, like a wet damp cloth that you don't have to worry about for cleaning off your soldering pen, and you'll see that as we go. I'm going to be working on this piece of paper. I do not suggest doing that because it's flammable and this stuff gets really hot. I suggest working on, actually what I work on is like a glass table, because you can kind of see over here. I'm not sure if you can see it. Yeah, you can see it over here. I got some solder flicks. So when you're working with it, you're going to be flicking solder off the tip of your soldering iron. And it's just good because if it's on a glass table, it like pops off easy. It's easy to rub off and you can clean it up easy. So let's get into this. So I have a quick little, if I can find it here. Wherever it went. Anyway, I got the quick little LED setup. We have the 4 LEDs. They're going to be in series with a 9-volt battery. So I made it up already really quickly. So you got 1, 2, 3, and then 4 LEDs. My battery. So you got your, flip it around here. So you got your positive lead coming out, hits your resistor, goes into the positive end of the LED, out the negative ends, positive end, negative end, and so on. So on this one, I have red is on my positive side of this LED, and black is on my negative side. You can tell it's got the big flat plate for the negative, small little plate for the positive. So when you hook it up properly, if I can do it here, these guys should light up. And yeah, there we go. So we got light flowing through. This resistor is a little smaller than it should be. It's not that big of a deal. It's like, I don't know, like 2 ohms smaller than what it should be. So that's fine. This will work for quite a bit. You can always throw in like a switch in here, which just makes it easier to turn it on and off. So go boot on, boot on. It's really easy. So if by chance though you're building your circuit and you wire it all up, you stick everything together and it doesn't light up, it's possible that you put one of your LEDs in backwards. So it's always good to test your circuit before you actually solder everything together. So for instance, let's say that I have all my positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. Let's say I accidentally put my negative to the other negative. I put it on, nothing's happening. There's no light there. So it's a pretty good indication that your LED's in backwards. Just as a quick reference to compare the brightness of the LEDs. So the higher the wattage, the more power and more light you're going to get off of your LEDs. So this is how bright this little guy is here. Just point it at the camera, and so it's pretty bright. It's not bad. These little LEDs, these little like Bell LEDs, they have a range where it's best to look at it. So if you're looking at it side, it's not going to be as bright as if you look at it like directly on. So when you're putting that into your costume, you want to make sure if you're using these guys where they're pointed. You don't want to be pointing some this way, that way, and this way, because your LEDs are going to look of different brightness. The other LEDs that we got here, the ones that I call the nipple LEDs, they are like, this guy's a 1 watt LED, which is pretty powerful for an LED. And you're going to see here, it's like really bright. So I connect these two and it is like just super bright. Like you can see that glow coming off, and if it looks directly at the camera, it's pretty bright. And these guys have like a really wide angle, so they don't really matter that much which direction they're pointing. They're bright pretty much all the way around. But it is easier because they got a flat back. It's easier to mount them straight on. So if you want really bright ones, go with the little nipple guys, 1 watts. Just when you're working with, oh fuck, sorry, that got hot. When you're working with your resistors and everything, just keep in mind that these guys aren't necessarily exactly 2 volts and 20 milliamps. So you might have to play around with, instead of 4 LEDs, you might have to use 3 or something like that. If you're worried that that your resistor is too small, when it's touching and when it's lit up, if your resistor is too small, these are going to start heating up. So if it gets pretty warm after like a minute, then you probably want to put like a bigger resistor in, just in case. Or unless you can find some information online about the exact voltage and amps of these guys, that'd be the best way to go. I have just been too busy to look that up. So I'll quickly go over on how to solder these guys together. It's really simple. Just get it set up here 1 second. Okay, so we're set up here. There is, I have to apologize, 2 things that are handy to have when you're making your circuits. They're not necessary like at all, but they're just like super easy. It's totally worth buying. I forgot to mention the soldering iron kit that I got there. I think it was about like $25, maybe $30. It's pretty cheap. They last like forever. Worst case scenario, you have to buy new tips, which are probably like $5 or something like that. You can get them online for pretty cheap. But so you got this little clamp stand, which is super handy when you're soldering because it holds your wires in place for you. Because the wires get like really hot when you're soldering. You have to heat them up to melt the solder. So this like saves you from burning your hand or burning whatever you got set up. This guy here I think is, oh geez, I don't know, probably like $30. You can go buy them in hobby shops, but they're probably like $50, $60 in a hobby shop. You can get them online for like $30, maybe $25 if you find the right place. I mean, it's not much to it. It's pretty hard to mess these up, so you don't have to really worry about quality. They're all pretty much identical. They got a little magnifying glass on the top if you want. I don't really use that for this kind of work. The other thing you're going to want to maybe look into getting is a wire stripper. This is like pretty dirt cheap. It's like, I don't know, maybe $5. It has a whole bunch of different numbers here. These are just for the different gauges of wire. So small wires, big wires, all that stuff. It's really simple to use. You can use a knife, like a pen knife or an X-Acto knife to strip wires. It's just more difficult. You can end up cutting the wire, and if you cut the wire, it's not going to be as strong, so it might break later on. So I really suggest going with a wire stripper. So they're really easy to use. You get your wire, you line it up, just kind of figure out which one it is. This is a pretty small wire, so you're going to stick it in the 22 slot here. So you just line it up in the little groove, squeeze down, hold it like shut, grab the wire, and you just pull. And there we go, you can see the wire's all stripped so I can have good contact. I use copper, it's called solid core, which means it's just one single wire. You can get like multi-strand, which is like a bunch of little tiny wires. They're both good. This guy's pretty strong and easy to work with. The multi-wire is easier to bend, so it's really up to personal preference what you like more. I think they're about the same, but it's wire, so it's pretty cheap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hook this guy up to an LED. So it's pretty easy. I have my soldering pen here heating up nicely. I just have it cranked up high right now because it was cold. You don't have to go like all the way up. You can go like lower, especially if you're working with like silver lead LED, solder. It melts at a lower temperature, so you don't have to crank it all the way up. So that's yeah, it's pretty easy. So let's quickly go over how to solder. There's a couple little tricks that are handy. They're not absolutely necessary, but it'll definitely help out in the long run. So I have a black wire. I'm going to call that my negative. I'm going to look at my LED. I got inside here. You can see, let's flip it over. You can kind of see. So you got like a, sorry, I shouldn't be using the yellow one. I should be using the clear one. It's easier to see. But we got a big flat plate on the right-hand side. Small flat plate on the left-hand side. So my big flat plate's my negative. So I'm going to take my wire. I'm going to take them together, kind of cross them. I'm going to twist them. That's just to give it like a stronger connection. It's more mechanically sound. So you can see here that my wire is nice and twisted together. Focus. There you go. So it's nice and twisted together. It's not bad. It's still loose, so I'm going to want to solder it. So I'm going to take my clamps, stick him on here, stick him on here. That's why it's super useful to have these guys. Let's see if I can zoom in. Yeah, so you can see that that's holding nicely. So now what I'm going to do, when you're soldering, you have your soldering pen. It's heated up, so you can see it's changed color now. It's kind of like a dark, that's pretty hot. That's probably doesn't need to be that hot. So it's like a dark kind of gasoline blue color. So it's nice and hot. What you're going to want to do is you're going to want to take, where did I put my solder? There it is. You want to take your solder, and I'll just get a strand here. Okay, there we go. So you're going to take your solder, and you're going to get some solder on the end there. So it's got like a little, sorry, it's got a little bulb of, it's not really focusing. It's got a little bulb of solder on the end. It's going to kind of flick that off. So now it's just got a little tiny bit of solder on the end. The reason you do that is because it focuses all the heat on the end, which is like a lot easier for soldering. So you're going to take your soldering iron, you want to touch it against the two wires that I have wrapped together. It's going to heat up the wires, and then it's going to melt the solder right onto the wires. So there we go. So you notice there's a lot of smoke coming off it. My temperature is pretty high, so I could probably lower that. Sorry, it was just high because I wanted to heat it up for this demonstration. So I put the solder on, it's melted, it cools really quickly. So you want to take your soldering pen, you want to take that damp cloth that you had earlier, and just kind of quickly wipe off the tip, just lightly. So that just kind of cleans the solder off so it doesn't like solidify and get all dirty and gross on the end. So I'll turn that off. So now we got our LED. Solder cools off pretty quickly, so I can like grab it. It's not hot. If you can see here, it's nice. Solder cover, I can tug on it. It's not going anywhere. So it's nice and tough. It's bendy. You will notice that when you put the solder on, you lose a bit of flexibility, like actually a fair bit of flexibility. So keep that in mind when you're building your circuit, that wherever your solder is, you're not going to have as much flexibility. Another thing that you're going to want to do, I totally forgot until just now, is you're going to want to cover these leads up. Because if you have, when you're building, and if these two leads will touch each other in your circuit, what it'll do is it'll short circuit. So the electricity won't go through the LED. It'll just go through this little connection and out the other wire. So you'll want to insulate your wires. You can do that with a few different things, like electrical tape or hot glue gun glue or whatever. The thing that I like to use, if I can find some, here it is. It's called heat shrink, or like a heat wrap or something. It's like a black heat activated plastic. So it's like a tube. This is a pretty big one. You'd probably want smaller size for this kind of a wire. It's pretty easy to work with. So you just cut off a piece here. So you get a piece that's about the size that you want to cover up. You just slide it on. So it's covering. This is probably not the right size you want to be using for this kind of wire. It's really big. And you're going to take your soldering iron, it's turned on, get nice and heated up, and you're just going to want to lightly brush it against the flat end. Brush your heat shrink with the flat end of your soldering iron, and you'll notice that it's kind of hard to see, but it'll start shrinking. Just lightly brush it. It's a lot quicker and easier when you use the proper size. But you can see here that this is really the wrong size to be using. But you can see that it shrinks, and when it shrinks, it'll when you use the proper size, at least when it shrinks, it'll just seize right up to the covering of your wire, and it'll cover the rest of your wire. See, here's where it's not heated. It's pretty big, squishy. Here's where it is heated, not squishy. It kind of solidifies too. It comes hard and small and just covers everything up and protects it too. You don't have to worry about things crossing the wires and short-circuiting and losing the rest of your circuit. Yeah, if you have a short circuit with your LEDs, you want to really be careful with that, because if you're short-circuiting this LED, you're not eating up that voltage. So your resistor will be too small for the rest of your LEDs, and you could have them blow out or like just burn out. Which is, yeah, a pretty big shame, because if you got your costume, you got everything built in it, then your LEDs burn out, you have to rip everything apart and stick new ones in. It's a total mess. So I think that's pretty much it. If that wasn't clear, or if you have any other questions, just let me know. Give me a shout. I can make another video on something else if you have questions, like switches or I don't know, whatever you can think of. I'm starting to learn a bit about Arduino boards, so to get the LEDs to flash in different patterns and all that stuff. I'm still pretty new at that, so we'll see how it goes. But yeah, let me know if it works for you.